And we have on the line Mr. Peter Townsend, the president of the National Democratic Movement. Good morning, my friend. How are you this morning?
Good morning, Mr. Derby. It's very good to hear your voice and to be on your program. Good morning to you and your listeners and your producers. And congratulations on the fantastic work you've been doing in media over these many years and in present time.
Why? You sleep kind of something,
Well, guess what? You have earned it. You deserve it. You have put in the work, and you are continuing to work.
Because when they criticize persons, they're more for tear down and get you home.
Well, look here. That happens anywhere in the world.
Yes.
Don't like criticism, and so different people react differently to it. But it's not about pleasing people. It's what is for the greater good of the country. You may have to trample on individual corns in the process, but so be it, because if we are to please everybody, then you know what will happen. You remember that story from the old-time primary school, the man and his son who tried to please everybody with carrying the donkey?
And you mean that he would turn the jackass and he have a donkey? Oh.
Exactly.
But you know, it would be very interesting to tell us that story, Just remind us of that story.
Well, I think the story goes along this line, that this man and his son went to purchase a donkey. And they were heading back to their home in the village with the donkey. And they were leading the donkey on a leash, on a rope, or what you call it, bridle. And they were walking beside the donkey.
Donkey stubborn.
The first person they came up and said, "Hey, old man, how silly you are. Why are you and your son walking and the donkey is walking freely? You should be riding the donkey." So he jumped on the donkey and the little boy was leading them. And a second person stopped them and said, "Hey, look, that's selfish on your part, Why don't you put your son on a donkey as well? Instead of you alone on a donkey and your son walking." So he stopped, put his son on the donkey. The third person they met said, "You are a wicked set of persons. Both of you are burning the donkey and breaking the donkey's back. That's cruelty to animal. In fact, I think you guys should be carrying the donkey instead of the donkey carrying both of you." And they came off the donkey, got a piece of stick and tied the donkey's legs to it, and both of them were slinging the donkey, and both of them were now carrying the donkey tied to the stick, turned upside down. They tried to please everybody, even it was impractical.
That is a classic one. And that says something about leadership. It's a story that every leader should know. Because if you try to please everybody, you see, you will end up being the jackass.
Being a jackass.
Exactly. Because the fact is, the donkey was always a donkey. That's what he is. But then they make people tell him all kind of foolishness. So they end up carrying the donkey and end up being the jackass. It is. Now, you're here this morning because I must say, but we'll get to that afterward about in terms of the presence of India. But we can probably touch that near the end. But I want to say that persons need to understand that you probably recall that I was on the street with all you guys when we were talking about constitutional reform. And the NDM is one of the first organizations that I must say that one associated with this whole idea of constitutional reform. And I said, if they were out there early in the day, we need to hear from them, whether they are popular or not, because my position on that is that the system is so set up that when I put up the post last night and somebody said to me, "Vernon, I thought there were only 2 parties in Jamaica." I got a message from Cayman Islands, actually. And they couldn't believe it. I had to send them links and so on to let them know that there are more than 2 parties, because the whole system is structured to accommodate 2 parties.
Right. The two cousins did structure things and the culture in a way that favors the two traditional parties.
And the 2 cousins you're referring to is Mount Mandy and
Alexander
Bustamante, right. Mm-hmm.
Right. Now, you're so right, Vernon. Now, the NDM, when we were formed and launched on October 29, 1995, our calling card was constitutional reform. And that is why, at this present juncture, where we are now looking at removing the monarchy and becoming a republic, This is the moment we have been advocating for to come. This is what we have been saying from 1995, that we need to become a republic. We need to reform our constitution and change the structure of our government to make it more Jamaican friendly, to make it the ruling of the people, by the people, and for the people, to deepen and broaden our democracy. Because we have a systemic problem and a politically cultural problem which feeds on each other, that created tribalism and what Mr. Patterson called some years ago the fight for scarce benefits and political spoils carried on by
two hostile tribes
that are perpetually at war.
Yeah.
That divide rather than unite the nation. And that holds true to today. The two parties don't kill each other like they did in the past, but the dice cast in terms of how tribalism works, how scarce benefits are distributed, and it has made Jamaica poorer for it. This country, which was once ahead of Singapore and the Cayman and the rest of the region, we have fallen down so badly because we have bastardized the Westminster export model, which we inherited from Britain, in a way that it has become dysfunctional and it is not serving the best interest of Jamaican people. And so if we are now going to remove the monarch, it is time that we not just remove the monarch as the head of state and replace him the local figurehead. We need to do a holistic reform of the constitution that will give more democracy and more options to the people to get better government. Because governments in Jamaica, Vernon, the truth is they have performed below par, mainly because of a systemic and cultural problems. And so the Westminster is built upon the premise of reasonable men and women who will act within certain conventions which are in Britain. So the British Constitution is an unwritten constitution, right? But they have strong convention that makes it work. So
they've been around for thousands of years, therefore
exactly.
There are certain practices.
So they gave us a written constitution, but we never import the conventions with it.
No.
And guess what? And we have a Nancy convention here because a Nancy...
What kind of convention we have?
Brother Nancy is still a folk hero in Jamaica until this very day.
So we probably forgive OJ then or they are making a national hero. My God.
I hope you mean orange juice in that case and not part of Jamaica.
I hear you. Yes, go ahead, man. It's like if I tell you, I told one gentleman what his OD stands for, ordinary dunce. Because some persons will get these national awards, Anyway, continue, my friend.
Right, and so we have to look at not just the tinker with this current Westminster export version that we have here, where let us look at the current status quo. Where we are now, we have a constitutional committee that was set up, and they are now reviewing the constitution. And so far, from what has come out of it, we know that the JLP and the PNP have agreed on one thing. Often they don't agree on things generally, but so far they've agreed that they're going to remove the King Charles and they want a local replacement.
You mean you're going to have a local King Derby?
Well, no, therefore, changing the GG's status to that of president, that's what Barbados did. So the GG would now become president, so he would be a ceremonial head of state, and he would be elected not by the people, but he would be appointed, or he or she would be appointed by the Prime Minister upon the purported consultation of the leader of the opposition. But you know no consultation, so-called, goes.
And by the way, it must be very difficult when you have two cousins in charge again.
Well, yeah. Yeah. And so that's where they are, and they go further. Appointing that person by the Prime Minister would now be ratified by a 2/3 majority of the House of Representatives. Not a bad idea. It's an improvement of what we have now. But where the two of them depart from each other is one wants the president, the ceremonial president, to be voted on by both houses of parliament meeting together, whereas one wants it to be both chambers of the House of Representatives, that is the lower house and the Senate, meeting separately to get a two-third majority. So this is.
So hold on, let me ask you something. So right now, I regard Jamaica as a very undemocratic country. Okay, anybody want to say? We have MPs. We don't know how they get selected, right? And they give it to MP and we CLP and PMP and we also vote for them. Then no senators. The last. By the way, you vote for the senators?
No, well, I'm glad you're going there. Why are you sneaking preview in our proposal?
Well, guess what? I won't go no further. Let me go for the break. Let me go for the break. I don't go to, but all I can tell you, boy, me never did vote for them, and no I understand why they about to sign a document. Because if I appoint you, you can't tell me say that leaving. If I appoint you, they must come out. If I say you must go, so that is why we call it the way called the pre-signed resignation. That's why it's important. So somebody realize, you see what we do, we cost the PM about what something, but when the system is flawed, then I would never call it smart people. They find way to get around with it. How can you appoint a senator? It's about senator independent my foot, and then that senator is not performing according to your mandate because you appointed him and you can't move him. So the way they just give him a pre-signed letter and say, listen, may have your resignation. So I want you to just say, you're gone. So
thank you for going there, Vernon.
But the last thing before I go for the break, though, is that, and we don't realize that when you don't do things properly, it come back to haunt you. When the House of the Parliament, that's the lower house, voted to have the state of emergency, can you imagine? The unelected bunch of people in the upper house voted against it. So those who were democratically elected, their decisions were overruled by those who were not democratically elected. What a country, what a life. When we come back, we're going to talk more about that because I don't want to steal the thunder.
Vernon Derby. Oh, love. Get ready for roller. Oh, love. Ready for roll, ready for roll, ready for roll. Vernon Derby, roll, ready for roll, ready for roll. You're tuned to Vernon Derby. Oh, love.
Welcome back. You're listening to Riddim FM, coming to you live from Kingston, Jamaica. Of course, my guest is Mr. Peter Townsend, the president of the National Democratic Movement, NDM. Yes, good to have you, sir. You're back with us.
Yes, back with you. Wow, I must commend you and congratulate the popularity of your program because the amount of ads that I heard in that break, I've never heard it on any other station. So congratulations, you must have been something right why you have so many advertisers in the slot. So that is, I couldn't let that go unnoticed. But
and I know you won't because the program is a different kind of program. It's like the gal this and that and that. Therefore, one has to work harder to get attention. You see, let me tell you something. Before I get back to you, I said once that if some man have AIDS and there's a cure on the right, and there are some scantily dressed ladies of the night on the left, where would they go? All right. Enough said on that one.
Enough said. Yeah. So, Brother Vernon, before I get into telling the public what is our position, it's important that I preface it with what is currently and what it is that the PNP and JLP seem to want to do next.
Yes.
And I'm going to tell you why we think we need to do more reform than that. So what's the current status quo? This current status quo is that we have the King of England as our head of state, and his local representative, the Governor General, is our ceremonial head of state. And the Prime Minister is the head of the executive. The Prime Minister is elected because the delegates of the party elect he or her to be their leader, and based on the seat counts in an election, if they have the majority seat, they become Prime Minister. And they and their MPs who are in Parliament as MPs also become ministers of government. Remember, there are three arms of government to have good governance in any country in the world.
Yes.
You must have an executive, you must have a legislature, and you must have a judiciary.
Right.
So the executive is the cabinet and the prime minister and the deputy prime minister. The legislature are the parliamentarians who make the laws, and they are supposed to be the people's watchdog to say the cabinet and the prime minister are not running roughshod over the people.
But how you do that when they are sitting in the same living room?
Well, this is the point I'm making, right? And then the Senate, which is a part of the parliament that approves the bills before they become law or before they're implemented, is also handpicked by the prime minister and the leader of the opposition. They are elected by the people. And so these people who are unelected are going to now review laws that are made by the elected people.
So let me ask you something.
And then before they give it, they give approval, and then it goes to the governor for royal assent. So that is what it is now as we have it.
So it seems to me now that although the Constitution does not stipulate whether party, JLP or PNP, there's Mr. George Wright, who should be regarded as part of the opposition. Am I correct? Because that's part of government.
Well, Mr. That's his position is in a class by itself, because this moment I've heard that he's now with the opposition, and then the opposition doesn't want him to sit on their bench.
No, but what I'm saying, whether they want it or not, the fact is he's not recognized as a member of the governing party. And if he's not, would he have the right to nominate persons to become senators?
In our culture and practice, the answer would be no. Right? So that's the current status quo, Vernon. Now, what is it the PNP?
Oh, another question. Suppose, for example, there were 63 seats, and 62, the government wins 62, and the opposition wins 1 seat. So you are telling me that one person would become the leader of the opposition, and that one person, he would now be entitled to nominate his slate of senators. 8 of them. 8 senators. One person. Now, so it means, therefore, if the government, which has 62 seats, have a position and vote overwhelmingly in Parliament, 62 of them voted for that law to come into place, just like the state of emergency. That one man, with his 8 senators, could block it.
And in fact, in 1983, when there was a snap election, Mr. Siaga had all the 60 or 63 seats in Parliament.
Right.
He was the one who also appointed the 8 senators on the opposition side.
Oh, I remember that. Yes, because the PNP had boycotted the election.
Right, that election, right. But getting back to it now, so where are they now? So where they are now is that they have both agreed through the Constitutional Committee that they both have representatives on, that we want to remove the king as head of state, and therefore we don't need a GG anymore, but the GG would not be rechristened into a title of president, and he would be, as it is GG selected now by the Prime Minister and the purported consultation of the opposition leader, whether the opposition like it or not, is appointed. But then now, what new they have brought to the table, which is not a bad idea, is that the people's representatives in Parliament, the MPs and the senators, would now have to approve that appointment of president. Now, so one party is saying that it should be a joint sitting and joint voting of the House, lower house and the Senate, and one is saying they should be sitting separately. So the implication for that is this, Vernon. The JLP is in favor of both houses meeting jointly to decide on who become president, because it suits the JLP now, because they have more than a 2/3 majority in the lower house, but they don't have a 2/3 majority in the Senate based on how it is set up with the 13-8.
Right.
But when you blend them together, the JLP will get the 2/3 automatically. So therefore, Mr. Owens could appoint whoever he wants to be president, and they would get away with it. PNP could not stop it. Whereas the PNP way of having it vote in 2 separate chambers, would mean even if the JLP recommended appointee pass the 2/3 test in the lower house, because they do have more than a 2/3 majority in Gordon House. But when it comes to the Senate, they would need at least one PNP senator to have a consensus and to cross over in his or her vote for that president to be appointed. Not bad, right? But interestingly, when the shoe was on the other foot, when PJ was prime minister and that idea came up, And the PNP had more than 2/3 majority in the lower house. They wanted it how the JLP want it now, and vice versa. So the NDN is going further than that. We are saying just maybe to remove one ceremonial president and replace him with another ceremonial president. We don't need that. We would end up with unelected head of state and keep the unelected Senate. So this is what we are now proposing.
The unelected Senate, yes.
Right. So we are saying broaden the democracy.
Yes.
So first of all, this current arrangement where MPs become MPs because they're riding the coattails of the party leaders' popularity or unpopularity.
And you want to become a minister.
Right. And you want to become a minister. You see the conflict of interest?
Yes, it is.
And that is the Prime Minister, the power, because he sits in Parliament, he or she, they can dissolve Parliament if they don't like what's happening and call fresh election because they can manipulate the system.
And the Parish Council too.
And the Parish Council,
yes.
They call it when they feel like.
Right.
So this is where we are now. So this is what we are proposing. That we remove the King as head of state and do not just a partial reform of the Constitution, but to take the time out now to do it properly. This thing about we're in a hurry to do it, just to the Queen and we can talk later. No. Fix it now. So we are proposing that.
No, man, you have to be in a hurry. You have to follow back a Barbados. Where you take this thing for?
Well, I don't want to just follow the Barbados model. This is the model that they want to follow the Barbados model because it suits them. What suits the people is not relevant. It should be relevant. So what we are putting forward, we believe verily that it would suit the people. So what are we proposing? That one, the Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister be elected in a separate ballot by the people. So when you go to elect a ballot for your Prime Minister and your Deputy Prime Minister and one ticket, and the Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister cannot be running for a parliamentary seat. They must be running for whether Prime Minister or President, what they're going to give that the title. But by the way, we are recommending that we do not have two head of state, a figurehead, ceremonial head of state, and a political head of state. We are not for that model. One head of state, one head. So that head must be an executive president directly elected by every single voter in Jamaica. And they would elect their members of parliament on a separate ballot. So therefore, if they don't like the MP candidate and the ticket that they like, the party leader, they can vote for the other MP candidate and the other party. So they could end up with the MP from one party or an independent, and they could have a prime minister or a president from another party or who is independent. So it would be, and then now.
Hold on. Let me hear my friend say no.
That will never happen.
Him always talk rubbish, you see.
You remember what happened because Portmore? Only one time it never happened nowhere else.
Lord have mercy. He can't chat rubbish. He must have talk with the parish council where you elect your mayor.
Your mayor directly.
Yes.
Look here.
What must make sense though?
There are people who have vested interest in keeping the system as it is now, Vernon.
Yes.
We can't make every dog that bark, we pay them attention. So getting back to the gist of it. So when you let the Prime Minister know, the Prime Minister would then put forward his cabinet, and they're recommending that the cabinet must constitutionally be not more than 12. This job for the boys and the girls where you have a massive cabinet because you want to reward people, you know?
So you're redundant for them, but you're not easy.
Reward people at the expense of the public and at the expense of efficiency.
Yes.
Right? And good judgment. Right? And then those 12 appointees must be ratified by the people's representatives in the Parliament. Parliament must, by a simple majority, approve these ministers.
Yes.
And then now, if the Prime Minister wants to appoint anybody as minister that is an MP, they have to resign their seat as MP to become a minister because you cannot serve two masters at the same time. That's a recipe for corruption and mismanagement. Not because you can run a seat, you can run a ministry. And many of them are there warning bench in the Parliament because there's a rubber stamp to the government in power because they are beholden by what is called collective responsibility, which is rightly so. If you're in the cabinet, you must be loyal to the Prime Minister and the rest of the cabinet based on its doctrine of collective responsibility, which is fair and reasonable. And so even if they are now passing a law that is to the detriment of your constituents, you have to side with the cabinet.
And don't forget that when you're in the cabinet,
your people.
you're sworn to secrecy. As far as I know, the cabinet discussions are confidential. So you are part of the executive where things are confidential. Decisions might be made which is in conflict with your interest as the parliamentarian, but you have to shut your mouth.
Yes.
By the way, before I go further, I hope persons understand what we are doing. And I can't put me in a position to say I support GLP, PAP, NDM. What we should be using this time to do is to discuss it objectively. So if you are PNP and your party are chat rubbish, do not agree with it. The same thing with the PNP or the NDM.
I'm glad you raised that point, Vernon. In fact, let me just take a moment to say that I'm appealing to my fellow Jamaicans that during this golden opportunity, because this is first since 1962, we are having an opportunity to shape our own government and our own country and to build a new republic. So if we are going to do this construction or reconstruction...
By the way, those are the first things we never did before, because in 1962, we never do it.
Right. So this is our golden opportunity. This is our time as a people. So don't trivialize it. Don't get carried away by your party's partisan myopic view. Broaden your mind and open it to learn and understand our various options.
Yes.
So which is right. Because what the NDM is proposing is not to get rid of the PNP or JLP, but to set the framework of the system in such a way that they can efficiently operate in the best interest of the majority of Jamaicans rather than acting for themselves only. So that's what we are putting forward. So you get to the answer about the direct election of the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister on one ballot, and the MP on another ballot, and the MP must be the people's watchdog. And the Senate now, we are proposing that the Senate, which is the review chamber of Parliament, where they review the bill passed by the lower house, and then they give it final approval. As it is in any country in the world, we are keeping that. But what we are saying is that these persons cannot be just some appointees, that two persons appoint. Because those two persons would almost be like the people making law. Because we can see when one of those senators cross their path, they want to recall them that individual person with updated letter or otherwise.
Well, me want to believe that the only way I would say senators must not be elected is if senators can send back things to Parliament, but when it goes back, they can't do anything again. But the moment the Senate can overrule Parliament, they must be elected. You cannot have an unelected body which can overrule the elected body. It's just not possible. So by the way, hold on. Help me now, because if I bright, be bright, so some people still help because I don't think be that bright. That seems illogical. You think it's logical?
Bright, man. Don't discount yourself. You know you're a bright guy. You know that. You are the Vernon Derby. But this is what we are proposing. We are proposing that the Senate, since you vote for the Prime Minister on a ballot and you vote for the MP on another ballot, we are proposing that the senators be put in place, be elected on a proportional representation basis. And we have two aspects to that. We are putting forward two options on a proportional representation. Option number one, which is our preferred choice, is it will be based on, first of all, for a party to be able to appoint one of the 21 senators, they must have at least 5% of the popular national vote, which would entitle them to one senator, right? And then, if you have 55% of the popular vote, you'll be able to appoint 55% of the senators. If you have 30% of the popular vote, you can appoint 30% of the 21. So it end up back with the 21, but it reflects the national vote. Let me tell you why. The national popular vote, to me, is you should reflect the will of the people nationally. But sometimes the seat count does not reflect that. In the last election, for example, the JLP got 47 seats and the PNP got the rest, which is less than 20. So the JLP automatically have a 2/3 majority. Get that? Now, but the popular vote was not so. The JLP really got about 55% of the national vote, and the PNP probably got 45%. So the Senate vote will reflect the will of the people nationally. And so you'd have a more balanced Senate, because each party would have to have put a slate of potential senators to the nation in election, that these are the persons that they have on their slate of senators. So each party puts up 21 persons, so these are our Senate choices. So that is.
But I tell you, I definitely like the Senate now to be a really review chamber. So what they can do, if something is against the law,
Yeah.
then they can act, but they would have to be based on law. But I would not like them to have the power to be able to overrule the elected.
But in any country in the world, the Senate has the final vote, and so we don't want to change that, Vernon.
But sometimes Jamaica can be different. We must follow back on the rest of the world sometimes,
No. But all right. In fact, I'm going to mention that point because in looking at our proposals, right?
Yes.
What we have said and done is that we sometimes have to look outwardly and not just inwardly. We have to look. There are countries that have there is data and information. We can look at objective comparisons with other countries.
But let me tell you something. I've heard that argument before.
Hold on, Vernon. No, let me make the point.
Yes.
We have to analyze. We have to look at the effectiveness of institutions that have been developed over the years, hundreds of years of a body of work, and institutions that are functioning. Why? We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We just need to take the best of elsewhere and create a hybrid of our own.
But you want me to tell you something though, when it comes to politics, what matters is the culture of the people, the mind of the people. So you'll have a perfect system working in Australia and you put it at Jamaica. And we mash it up. So that's why I'm very skeptical about taking things. Just like how some persons talk about this gentleman who come from up north, say I'm an expert. But they say, I can keep the expert to yourself. You know me want from my coach, but I don't need nobody's town expert to tell me what they want. And by the way, I must tell you, I'm a little bit concerned about that because that created a little bit of controversy at the beginning. And I told the minister that since it created controversy, we really don't want controversy. Probably it's a good idea to have the man, but since it started off with controversy, if I were him, I would step aside. The fact that he has not stepped aside and is not a Jamaican sends a wrong message to the nation, my brother. So, I support on PMP or jail. Probably he's a damn good man, but I'm just saying. Since it's controversial, because you want to be an inclusive thing, that is not a way to start.
You're tuned to Vernon Derby. Oh, love.
Welcome back. You're listening to Riddim FM. Mr. Townsend, boy, we only have about 3 minutes left. so
let me just quickly finish up my point about the elected Senate.
Right.
So, by the way, I endorse the Lupus Foundation, healthcare, and very important. That we should all support. Right. So I told you that our proposal speaks to election of the Senate on a proportional representation basis. But but the alternative to the proportionate vote, decided on the amount of senators appointed by each party or independents, is each parish would elect 2 senators. So they would run parish-wide to the senators, not in constituency. So each parish will be assigned 2 persons, and when people go to vote, they would know who the Senate candidate is for the parish. They would know who is the MP for their constituency, and they would know who is on the national ticket for the Prime Minister. And so each parish should be entitled to 2 Senate seats. And so the party with the majority of seats in the Senate would be the majority party in the Senate.
I love that.
And the party with the majority seat in the lower house would have the majority leader in the lower house. Mm-hmm. So that is, but some critics say, but you'd have a small parish like Hanover and Shillong that have like 78,000 people, having the 2 senators just as St. Catherine and Kingston with over 600,000 people. You could adjust that so that there are 5 parishes that have an average of less than 100,000 people in it, like Trelawney, Portland, St. Thomas, St. Mary, and Trelawney.
Right.
Those could be appointed 1 Senate seat, and the bigger parishes, the 2, and when you add up the maths, it comes to 21 senators.
Okay, why you love that magic figure of 21?
Well, that's a question too, so that is for those who would want the magic figure. But if there's no method to the magic figure of 21, then we'd end up with 26 senators.
Right.
Right. And I think that is workable. It would deepen the democracy, and people would have real choices because they would see somebody they like to be their MP to deal with their local issues. But then see somebody that, look, this person is a good senator. They can be a part of that final review chamber.
Yes,
that can pass the laws of my country. And that person has a say. The people have a say into who is running our country at all levels.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and then the election date will be fixed, and there will be term limits. And
we only have 1 minute now. I'm going to give you the answer very quickly. Why this whole debate now is being managed by politicians, which including yourself, I am surprised that civil society and business sector, they should be putting paid things on air and pushing the agenda. So it seems as if it's being now led by just a political directorate. You have a minute left.
You know, one former prime minister once said there's too much politics in our politics, too much partisan politics in our politics, and I believe that this opportunity that the country has to do with constitutional reform, we the people must not allow it to be railroaded by the PNP and JLP. We need to demand it to be broadened to include proposals from other interest groups, which I'm sure they're doing, and we are putting in our proposal that we have now just unveiled here, and we are hoping that the public will get exposed to it. And if the public shoot it down, so be it. But we believe that the people must have choice. And the NDM has always been at the forefront of this call for reform of the Constitution to make it a republic. But it must be one that will give power to the people, for the people, of the people, by the people.
All right, my brother. Thank you very much, the president of the National Democratic Movement, Mr. Peter Townsend. Thank you very much. We will be talking about this some more, and the station and this program is open for the other political parties to be a part of this discussion, because this program is a program with a difference, where we're not going to just allow boo-yo-yo-yo. No, we want to discuss things, national issues and international issues also. Thank you very much, Mr. Peter Townsend.
You're welcome, sir, and thank you to your listeners as well.
Right.